Satoru freaking Gojo is back. But he's confirmed dead. Jujutsu Kaisen has dropped the biggest plot twist which has left everyone speechless, as Yuta has taken over Gojo's body, becoming the strongest. The sad thing is, in order to defeat a monster, he had to become one himself, as his actions make even Sukuna's cannibalism look tame. And now, he only has 5 minutes left to live to defeat him.
For the love of God! Please!
Chapter 261 has so many layers, and I'll try my best to make sense of everything. Because if there's one sentence we never thought would come true, it's that Rika ate Kenjaku's brain so Yuta can transplant his own brain into Gojo's corpse. What? Ladies and gentlemen, Lobotomy Kaisen is real! 261 begins with Yuji declaring that he would crush Sukuna's heart, but his awakening gets immediately sidelined for the second main protagonist, with Sukuna just throwing him away. That's because a better toy has arrived.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
And Sukuna's eyes bulge out, witnessing the return of Gojo. However, after seeing the stitches, he quickly realized what Yuta had done. He had completely taken over Gojo's corpse using Kenjaku's technique. And Gege, he did an amazing job of portraying Yuta's expression on his sensei. This leads to Sukuna laughing, as he apologizes that he wasn't familiar with Yuta's game, and he didn't know he was capable of going so far. After all, Sukuna lives for Jujutsu, and Gojo was the one person he said to never forget for as long as he's alive. Having a second bout with him is a dream come true. Now, a lot of you may not be happy with this twist, or may even think it's an ass pull. But in my opinion, and the proof I'm going to provide, it's far from it. It's actually peak. For example, Kenjaku stated back in chapter 90 that Yuta could not become the next Gojo Satoru. But now, he literally became that by throwing away his humanity just like Sukuna would. This isn't the only instance that Yuta was referred to as Gojo. It happens many times in the story, like when Yuji mistakes him for Gojo due to his cursed energy in chapter 139. This is the final contingency plan that the sorcerers had cooked. We go back in time to see all the students claim this idea is horrible, and Maki completely opposes it. However, Hakairi intervenes to say that this should only happen when everyone is wiped out and they have no other option left. Basically, by eating Kenjaku's head, Rika allowed Yuta to copy his brain hopping technique. Panda claims this would increase their chances of victory by quite a lot, not just because of the surprise element, but also because Yuta would have access to Gojo's technique and all the memories of his fight with Sukuna. And since Sukuna was stated to have curse energy reserves equal to Yuta now, they would be on a level playing field, except Yuta's domain expansion skills would be even better. Yuta knows the ins and outs of how to deal with Sukuna's open domain, thanks to watching the fight. Plus, targeting a person was something even Gojo could not do, as evident through the Shibuya incident. And in chapter 250, Sukuna was impressed by their training. He states, this domain itself, its sure hit effect is narrow to apply only to me. And so, Yuji and Todo could support in this next clash. Let's go! Like, if Sukuna is calling Yuta's barrier technique sophisticated, with 6 eyes, this will skyrocket insanely, making him the biggest threat in the world for 5 minutes. However, Kusakabe and the others try to think of an alternative, suggesting that Yuta should copy Limitless or 6 eyes instead. But Shoko turned these ideas down. Limitless is of no use without the efficiency of 6 eyes, but that too was impossible to copy because it's part of Gojo's body, not a technique in itself. Moreover, the next question was that since Yuta could only use copy for 5 minutes, what would happen if that time ran out? Well, Mei theorizes 3 possibilities. The first one being simple, Yuta would die.
You're joking. Not another one?
So, in the event that brain hopping requires the user to run the technique constantly, Yuta will not be able to do so and will perish. Even if brain hopping needed to be activated over time intervals, this second situation would just delay the inevitable death of Yuta. However, if this were a one-time technique, Yuta would have to live inside Gojo forever. But knowing Gege, another plot twist can occur with a 4th option. However, that's my copium talking, because none of us want to accept the fact that Yuta is going to die in 5 minutes and Gojo is gone forever, because that means the ending Gege plan that only one sorcerer would live and everyone would die by the end of this manga is coming true. So the 4th option could be the return of Kenjaku or Gojo. Like, let's be honest, Kenjaku's abrupt death left a bad taste in our mouths since he created the entire story. So what if Kenjaku did a binding vow on his technique before his death, knowing Rika is about to eat him? This would make him come back to life one last time, never being able to use his curse technique ever again, thus giving up his immortality. He did say he hates to leave so much undone, and his will would carry on. And given that Mahito claimed even if he's crushed to bits, as long as he sustains the shape of his soul, he won't die, as curse energy is controlled by my will, we can see why it would make sense. But Gojo's death is confirmed. But you're probably gonna ask me, ABD, come on, you need to give us more copium, right? Well, I'm a good dealer, and my price is a like on the video and subscription. In chapter 90, Geto was able to take control of Kenjaku's arm for a few moments, and that was the first time something like that has ever happened in 1,000 years. This tells us that there's a chance that Gojo also returns, even if it's just for a brief period of time. If not to take over himself again, he might guide Yuta to the finish line or save him from dying in Gojo's body. So did Gojo go north or south? Let me know in the comments what you think as I dive even deeper, because this is where things get extremely sad. Everyone finds Yuta's idea repulsive. Even Maki, who despite everything she went through that made her a monster, she wants to latch onto humanity and not lose Yuta because she cares about him, claiming he's important. However, this triggers anger within our MC, and he calls out everyone's hypocrisy. The others claim they are worried about what happens to Yuta as a person. But when it comes to Gojo, this conversation doesn't even occur. Even his childhood friend Shoko didn't give a rat's ass about Yuta's heinous idea, so it pissed him off. As a result, we start to understand Gojo's words in chapter 236 perfectly now. There was always a gulf between me and other people, even if they adored me. You can admire a flower and help it bloom, but you can't ask it to understand you, which we know Shoko claimed in chapter 220 that Gojo wasn't alone. But in reality, she didn't understand it, nor cared to the extent that Yuta, Yuji, or Suguru Geto did. Gojo has been holding a burden of his title for the longest, and society made him become a monster that is feared just so it can live on peacefully for its selfish desires. Gojo is treated not only as a political tool, but as a weapon for the needs of others, rather than considering what he feels ever since he was 5 years old. This even went as far as the USA when Kenjaku told them about Gojo. The first thing they thought of was to abuse him for infinite energy as a resource. So Yuta claims they don't realize what they are up against, and throwing away their humanity is a cheap price to pay, just like Yuji stated his death was. As a result, Yuta claims one of them needs to take Gojo's spot once he dies, and if no one is willing to step up, then he will.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Yuta abandons his humanity, just like Sukuna, as he does not want everyone's sacrifice to go in vain. They are now being forced to use inhumane tactics, which would go against the morality of people like Angel, who care about God and his creed. Yuta acknowledges that despite being the good guys, they are still part of the depressing world of Jujutsu. I mean, Yuji himself had to eat his unborn brothers to gain power in parallel. This final panel gives insane context to Yuta's expressions during Gojo's fight with Sukuna, where it seemed like he was shitting his pants. There was nobody in that room who wanted Gojo to win more than Yuta because of how much he loves his sensei and he knew what he would have to do. This is why Yuta wanted to help Gojo before he died in the 3vs1. And the sad part is, Yuta is left out of this plan due to resonance, yet he is the only one that told Yuta to proceed to help Gojo.
It's pretty difficult to put into words how disgusted I am, how depressed I am.
But this story gets even more tragic. Yuta begs Gojo not to bear the burden of being a monster alone anymore. And because he is second to none to him, Yuta is able to put himself in Gojo's shoes, where he responds there's nothing that can be done about that, as he was left in the dust when he separated from Geto, whom committed atrocious acts to achieve his ideals. So Gojo, he must do the same. If you think about it, society dehumanized Gojo. Yuta was strong enough to grasp the curse that comes with such decisions, as Gojo told him that love is the biggest curse of all. From the very start of Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuta's power came from using his loved ones, as curses from Rika to now Gojo. But that's where he shines, as Gojo told him in chapter 1 of volume 0 that the curse attached to Yuta can help people depending on how it's used, and it's up to him if throwing all that away is worth it. This brings the story full circle with Yuta's actions. He basically states that his love for Gojo and his friends are worth throwing away his humanity by deciding to take Gojo's body to win against Sukuna, becoming the very thing he seeks to destroy to reach their heights of power. This whole plot was foreshadowed when Yuta was told by both Uro and Ryu that he had a limit and gets driven over the edge. Overwhelming aggression, just like a natural calamity, being alone at the top separates them. To reach the heights of Gojo, you cannot worry about the future or identity. So this ties into Yuta's choice now for the sake of his loved ones. Funnily enough, even Uraume claimed modern sorcerers' idea of humanity was holding the sorcerers back from breaking what they can. And those of you stating that this was some random ass pull, well, look all the way back to chapter 245. Hikari foreshadowed Yuta's final plan by responding, claiming Yuta said something similar about humanity which moved him. But speaking of making us emotional, remember when Yuta stated, I want to be relied on by somebody. I want to believe it's okay to keep living. Yet even now, the sorcery world has stripped him of this. Yuta loved Gojo so much that he promised to kill Kenjaku so he wouldn't have to kill his best friend again. Yet in the end, everyone's ideals and outlook on Jujutsu is just catching up to Sukuna, as he claimed love is worthless, which Yuta is finding out is kinda true now, as he has to defile Gojo's body and give up on his promise he made to Rika, as he states sorry to her in this chapter. It's a bad omen and going back on a decision when you move the wedding ring from left to right hand, as the chapter portrayed. Now, think about it. Gojo was the man who stopped Yuta's execution and nurtured him into who he is, claiming he didn't want Yuta to be lonely unlike him. In fact, what comes next plays a major role. Yuta and Gojo are distant relatives, as he was told that he's a descendant of Sugawara no Michizane. However, Uro, who was from the Heian era, claimed that Yuta was from the Fujiwara clan. When Yuta brought this up, Gojo stated that there was a chance Yuta was born even more blessed than him, because he might be a descendant of both these powerful families, even though they had a feud with each other. This plays a factor in Gojo's takeover, as there's a chance that Yuta's soul will have a high affinity to Six Eyes and Limitless, therefore allowing him to exist inside Gojo's body and use his abilities to the max. Now, let's discuss why Gojo chose South and has been confirmed to be dead, as he had no problems with Yuta's plan, having full intention to win the battle. Let me remind you that a sorcerer is only powerful when they are a little crazy in the head and they take the risk to win. As Gojo stated, dying to win and risking death to win are completely different. He was supposed to kill Sukuna by any means necessary because he had been a tool for the Jujutsu world his entire life. Gojo was dehumanized by his strength, which is why in chapter 261, he was reminded of Geto asking him, are you the strongest because you're Gojo Satoru, or are you Gojo Satoru because you're the strongest? Even when he got unsealed from the prison realm, he took all the blame for the destruction and death upon himself, not even blaming someone like Gakuganji. It was his duty as the strongest, which is why he wanted to be the one to kill all the higher-ups so that there would be no repeat of what happened after the Shibuya incident. Gojo had always considered this option, as we see back in chapter 10, but after returning, he knew they pulled the final straw. Basically, Gojo was thinking far into the future, securing it for his students and even letting Gakuganji take over. After all, Gojo trusts him as mentioned in chapter 223. He refused to share the secrets of Principal Yaga's technique, and Gramps has changed for the better, which would make things better if he were at HQ. However, despite his students tagging along with him, Gojo asked them to leave to protect what was left of their innocence. There was always a monster in Gojo, which peeked out when he was fighting the curses at Shibuya, but he didn't want his students to see this. But they all insisted on staying with him, trying to ease his burden. But Gojo, he thinks of Geto. This is a callback to when Rika Amanai died. Gojo had a monster inside him, but his moral compass stemmed from Geto keeping him in check. He asked, should I kill every single person here, but was restricted via his best friend. But now, Gojo is implying that he became a monster to achieve his ideals, just like Geto did, and how the world perceived Gojo to be. Resetting Jujutsu society cannot occur without killing the higher-ups, especially since Kenjaku revealed he's controlling all the major clans behind the scenes. In a way, Gojo acknowledged that morality in the sorcery world is grey, and to achieve a dream, one must take away another's, as he was taught this harsh reality from childhood due to being brought up by the corrupt. Hence, Gojo used Jujutsu to satisfy himself, as Nanami mentioned in chapter 236, because what did Gojo even have to look forward to in life? He had the biggest purpose, but it was never his own. His identity was never separate from being the strongest. This is why Gojo didn't care when Yuta asked him about taking over his body upon death, and he had full intention to win. This shows us that he had been dehumanized, and since he is on the same side of the coin as Sukuna, he actually states the exact same thing Sukuna did to Yoruzu. For both of them, it's unthinkable to lose, as they live for the satisfaction of Jujutsu, and they could do whatever they wish with their corpse. As of right now, it looks like Gojo chose to go south. He ultimately lived for his students and wanted the Jujutsu world to fall in their hands. Even when he spoke to Principal Yaga about it, he states, it's not enough for me alone to be strong. I can only save those who are prepared to be saved by others. The students he has fostered have essentially reached his level in various ways now, like Kairi having better RCT, Maki having better defense, and etc. The rank of special grade has become obsolete, just as Gojo predicted. On top of that, I think Gege is doing some meta commentary here. Fans were fascinated by Gojo, but may not fully understand him. He wanted to be loved and understood, but he felt that even his peers didn't truly do that. They called him foolish for not listening, much like how we were in disbelief when he lost the fight. We wanted Gojo back just to satisfy ourselves, without considering the harsh reality of sorcery and life. Gojo passed away peacefully, content with his friends, which was what he wanted. That's why he said he hopes this isn't a dream in the airport scene. Even me, for example, I contemplated the Kenjaku technique last week, but instead of thinking of the darker reality that Gojo would not pull through, instead I tried to debunk it and think positively. Yeah, we were right about Gojo coming back, back, but I knew about the Yuta option too, but brushed it aside because we all wanted to believe in Gojo rather than thinking negatively and suffering. Everyone, including the readers, has tried to project their ideals onto the story, like love and friendship. But the truth is, we're all simply catching up to Sukuna's ideals. I wanted to believe that heroes will prevail, where they wouldn't have to resort to such heinous acts. But Gege, he's saying no, life is suffering, and Murphy's law that anything can go wrong will go wrong. In the end, Gojo was a weapon and a cog in the machine, having the same exact fate of not being laid to rest in peace, just like Geto. Now in chapter 261, it revealed that Gojo was unconscious after he was slashed by Sukuna, because Yuta was in the same position. However, only Rika's presence was holding his conscience together. Shoko healed Gojo's body as much as possible, and he had to quickly regenerate the rest with his own reverse curse technique. But then, who is going to teach Sukuna about love? Well, Yuji Itadori claimed he would die without any regrets. And with how the story is shaping up to be, his grandpa stated, save as many people as you can, even if it's only one person. Yuji, out of all the sorcerers, hasn't given up on his ideals and humanity, which made Sukuna ponder about himself in chapter 249 and admit it's unbreakable. And this, ladies and gentlemen, must be the reason why Sukuna hates Yuji so much. Unlike the others, Yuji doesn't want to conform to the sorcery world. Instead, he is reaching Sukuna's heights of strength using a different system of selflessness. However, even Gojo stated to Megumi, to become strong, you have to be selfish. However, by the end of the chapter, Yuta instantly cast the main expansion at the same time as Sukuna. This monster believes society should be based on strength rather than some puny stuff like emotions. Yuta is the manifestation of how the sorcerers are devolving to match his unshaken views. The only way to beat him is to become him. What if it's all that's at the end of the road is a mountain of dead sorcerers? Only time will tell. But to enjoy more peak fiction, watch this video about Rimuru and all his abilities. The actual strongest character in anime that can defeat Goku, Gojo, Sukuna, anyone you name.